information for their sales and marketing personnel. Finally, after the demo, we're going to have a Q&A session, and really look forward to hearing your questions and helping you out with any questions you might have. So our philosophy at FileOpen is to provide publishers with the technology that enables them to protect their revenue, to prevent unwanted forwarding, to prevent their clients being able to forward the research off to people who simply haven't paid for those documents, and to prevent their end users who have paid for the research being really fed up that they've paid for it, but they see other people getting it for free, and that's not fair. So in addition to preventing forwarding, we can also prevent other forms of piracy. For example, taking research and then just editing it by putting your name at the bottom, or copying it and disseminating huge chunks of research and passing that off as your own. And we combine all that with the most unobtrusive end-user interface so that the end users are not inconvenienced. Now, if we take a little historical look at the pain points, and this is what we've seen over the years with research clients in trying to balance protecting their research with not providing their end users with a digital version of being waterboarded. So what they've found was, and what we've seen is, that passwords really don't work. First of all, everybody hates them. And secondly, that they're not secure. If you pass the password, then you pass the security. They're not scalable. You can't really deploy 1,000 user plus end user environment, an enterprise environment, disseminating passwords. DRM typically, if it's obtrusive, it will turn the users off, and those users are ultimately who's providing you with the revenue, and you certainly don't want to discourage them from accessing your documents. DRM also can be very expensive if you have to deploy it on servers, if you have to pay per user, if you also have to have special hardware and software in order to deploy that DRM. Users also hate installing software. Very often it requires authority to do so. And finally, especially in the avalanche of mobile devices, is that those devices keep changing. People are mobile. They switch their iPhones, their iPad, their Android, and you need something that's going to be able to keep up with that kind of environment. As I mentioned earlier, we have hundreds of clients within the research sector. And here's just a few more of those companies. You might recognize a few of these. Now, these organizations have deployed various flavors of our DRM, but all of them and all research providers have one thing in common. They want the least obstacles for their users in order for the users to access those documents. So this isn't really locking down some kind of nuclear research or some very sensitive information. This is really just providing good business practice, but allowing your end users to be able to access those documents in the normal way that they would in order for them to conduct their business. So all of these providers have one thing in common. They provide quick and easy access to their end users so their end users can access those documents wherever they may be. Some of these clients have deployed the cloud-based offering that we provide. And with the cloud-based, there's a little bit of misnomer because the encryption, the document management of those documents is always held locally. The cloud part of the solution is the permissioning server in the cloud, in the cloud server. So when the user goes to open those documents, there's a call home to a permissioning server that checks that they're authenticated and that they're authorized to open that document. But control of those documents is always held locally. Some of these clients have deployed a server-based solution where they have the software on their servers on-premise and integrated with perhaps a document content management system or a CRM system or some other application, that they have an automated and highly scaled on-premise solution that enables them to deploy their research to their users automatically and control the whole lifecycle process of those documents. Some of these clients are using solutions provided by partners of ours, such as Blue Matrix or iPrio, where they have the rights management as an extension of those applications. Okay, we talked a little bit earlier about why FileOpen's DRM is a good fit for research. And a key aspect of this is the portability and the mobility factor of the technology. Research users want to be able to access those documents regardless of whether they're offline, on a train or a plane. They also want to be able to perhaps print those documents and certainly in this day and age they want to be able to access those documents on their Androids, their iPads and their iPhones. We enable this with the FileOpen app that's easily downloadable from iTunes. We also can provide you with the ability to give your users offline access, but also push them to online access to get the latest permissions whenever possible. We also allow you with the capability to control printing. So you can say to your users that they can print a copy, but when they do print a copy, you may want to apply a watermark across that copy, giving the user's identity, maybe with a gentle reminder that that research is for their use only and not for redistribution. So with FileOpen, you can give your users a very quick and easy way to access the documents instantly, wherever they may be, whether they're offline, online, and you can do this in a very cost-effective manner without having to deploy special software or hardware. As I mentioned earlier, our clients deploy various flavors of the FileOpen solution. First of all, we have a cloud-based solution, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a little bit of a misnomer because the only thing that's in the cloud is the permission server. It's holding the metadata about the users. We don't have access to the documents. You keep those locally, and that's very important. I don't think it's a great suggestion to have people having to upload documents all the time to have them encrypted. You should be able to do that whenever you want to do it and wherever you want to do that. So we suggest that you keep your documents locally and you encrypt those documents, and then you disseminate those documents wherever you want. Very often our users put the documents up in the browser dashboard, into the browser, so that the users can access those documents simply by following a link to those documents without having to deploy any client installation at all. What you also have as the administrator for those documents is a very simple, powerful browser dashboard, which we'll show you later in the demonstration. And that will show you how you can very easily and quickly encrypt your documents, manage your users, and manage your documents at the same time. So you could, for example, if somebody perhaps had a subscription model and maybe they didn't resubscribe, dynamically cut off access to those documents and decline that user. Or you could, for example, if a user, an individual, didn't want to have access anymore to the documents, you could just disable that user dynamically. You can also set up the subscription so it automates, so that you can have a subscription model that perhaps expires documents on a regular basis. Another way to deploy the DRM is the Right Server product, and this is on-premise, allowing clients to integrate with whatever applications they might want to in order to automate a workflow. So clients, for example, may want to automate the product with some kind of content management system or some other applications that are very widely used within the research industry. We also have clients who integrate with some of our partners, as I mentioned, Blue Matrix or iPrio, have DRM as an extension of their own product offerings. In addition to this, we have the capability of allowing you to have access and to deploy a toolkit scenario. So whatever kind of bespoke or custom requirements you have, you can always use the toolkit to customize a fully automated permissioning server and publishing workflow within your own individual organization. So to extend that portability, what we have done is extended the use of the PDF viewers. Now, most of our clients, and I think this is probably true across the industry, use the Adobe Reader to view PDFs. But there are a growing number of users who do want to use other viewers, for example, Nuance, or they might want to use Foxit, or other viewers that are coming on the market. We do encourage and support that, and we do encourage and support a wider use of the viewers that can be used. We also support the encryption of MS Office documents. So if you want to publish your research in, for example, Excel, and distribute it in Excel, you can distribute that to your end users in native format so that they can work with it. But obviously, the calculations and the metadata behind those documents is always kept under secure wrapper. In addition to that, we have the FileOpen viewer. So this enables users to view documents instantaneously in the browser. So you don't even have to send the documents to the users. You can just send them a link to those documents. They follow the link, and they can gain access to those documents securely using the highest level of encryption, AES 256 level, and without having to have anything installed on their PCs or their machines. They can access that document securely and get instant access to it. And then they can transport that to a mobile device, so they can look at the same document with 100% clarity and excellent quality to the iPad, the iPhone, or the Android, simply by downloading the free FileOpen app in iTunes. So let's have a look at the FileOpen ecosystem here. We've got this diagram here showing how it all fits together. We can integrate all of these aspects, but we're extending the kind of environment in which you can encrypt and also access documents within the FileOpen environment. So, for example, you could output your documents to Dropbox and have your users access those documents securely within Dropbox. Or, for example, you could output them and the user opens the documents using the Foxit viewer or some other third-party PDF viewer. If you allow your documents to be printed, you can print with a dynamic watermark. And you know what, in the research sector, very often this is just enough to put people off maybe taking a copy and disseminating it. Because if it's got that user's identity on the printout, so, you know, Bob Jones printed this from this organization and it's not for redistribution, that's usually enough to put Bob off doing anything he ought not to. So we're extending the ecosystem so that users don't hit an obstacle when it comes to either encrypting or accessing those documents in the normal line of business. The bottom here of the diagram, you can see HTML5 is probably the most exciting development in the DRM world. What this will allow you to do is to give your users the ultimate in unobtrusive access to encrypted documents. It really is the gold standard for accessing encrypted PDFs and MS Office documents. It gives the users the most unobtrusive access and portability aspect, and we'll be having a look at that a little bit later. I mentioned earlier that we'd have a sneak peek at our latest development, and this is the Document Monitor. Now, some of our research clients don't actually want to prevent forwarding of their research. What they do want, however, is to be able to view every single activity with that document. So they want to be, for example, see where the document is being distributed to. They want to see globally where those documents are ending up. And we can see here just a quick map of the world. And you can track your documents being passed around the world dynamically as soon as they're opened, without the user having to go through any hoops or have to download any special viewers to do this. So there's zero responsibility for the end users to do anything other than to be able to just access those documents. And once they access those documents, then you can have the ability to track every instance. For sales and marketing people in the research sector, this is valuable information because it shows them exactly who is opening the document where and what the location is and how many documents are opened. And you can see that there are various people because obviously their IP address changes and the location changes and the machine identities change. So you can see that there are different people opening the document and you can track that globally. So to summarize, therefore, what FileOpen provides is a solution that will meet your requirements, whatever they are, whether you want to be able to control the documents and prevent forwarding and prevent printing and prevent save as and all those other restrictions that you can apply, or whether you don't actually want to do that, whether you actually want to see where your documents are going and just be able to track every activity with that document. We can provide a solution for that. Whether you want to have a very controlled environment or not controlled environment, what we can provide is local control. So you have control of your documents at all times. There's no need to upload them to FileOpen for encryption. You control access at all times. You monitor your documents at all times. You can deploy across multiple platforms, and you can have this either on a premise or a cloud-based system. But the end goal is to provide you with a very quick and simple method of controlling your revenue, protecting your revenue, and to be able to give your users an experience that doesn't mean that they have to go through any inconvenience. I've got a couple of quotes here from some of our clients. We've got Mark Roberts, who's CEO of Wall Street, and we have Fred Hickey, who's the high-tech strategist editor. I'm sure you're familiar with these people in the market. They've been in the research market for quite a few years and a wealth of experience and a very wide circulation of their research material. So I'd like to hand you back to Emmanuel now. He's going to take you to the next part of the presentation. I look forward to hearing your questions afterwards, and thank you very much for your participation. Emmanuel.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that presentation. So I see we have some questions rolling in, and I also see some new attendees rolling into this room. So again, if you have any questions, just feel free to type them into the Q&A pod, and we're going to do our best to answer as many as we can at the end of today's webcast. So far we've had a chance to hear about FileOpen DRM, and now I'd like to hand over the mic to our CEO, Sanford Bingham, so we can actually see FileOpen DRM in action. So with that said, Sanford, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Emmanuel. And thank you all for attending this webinar, which I will confess is the first one we have ever done, and it's been fun. I'm sorry if we kept you waiting a little bit at the beginning. So I'm going to show you a piece of what we offer. And by that, I mean mostly some of the parts that Elizabeth was mentioning as the cloud and hosted solution, the zero install solution. I'm not going to spent a lot of time on our binary solutions around Adobe Acrobat and Foxit and so on, Microsoft Office. The goal here is to demonstrate how someone with no programming experience or resources can publish documents in a secure way using only a desktop computer and some facilities that are available, all of them either for free like Dropbox or through a subscription to our Rights Manager solution. So to set the stage, I'll point that I've got a few things installed here. Some of them, as I just said, I'm not going to talk about. So I have the Foxit plugin, I have the FileOpen client installed, but the one that matters here is that I have our local encryption tool. That's the Directory Monitor Rights Manager. And as Elizabeth pointed out, and we think this is important, the encryption of the documents is to take place here on my local PC. We do not require, and we know that there are circumstances in which it's not permissible to have the unencrypted originals leave the premise of the publisher. And to address that, we provide tools that allow local encryption. So what I'll do here is encrypt some documents, and I've created some example documents that I'll open up here. I'll encrypt some documents. I will then move those documents up. We'll put them into my Dropbox folder, and Dropbox will bring them up to the web, and an application that we provide as part of Rights Manager will then query that Dropbox and make those documents available on the web. And I'll demonstrate how we can configure that interface so that users see some or all of those documents and change the UI around them. I will also modify some of the permissions that are applied to the documents. So you can see here I'm setting myself up as a publisher of highly valuable information. Here's a document that tells me who's going to win the next election. Here's a document that tells me who's going to make it out of the minor leagues or into the minor leagues in 2016. Here's a document that tells me the pricing of commodity chips and such like for the next few years. And this one, my favorite, will tell me the weather for 2 years hence or 4 years hence. So what I'll do with these documents first is drop them into a folder that is being watched by the application that I just mentioned. This is the Directory Monitor application. It works as a local Windows service. Whenever documents appear in a folder that's being watched by this application, they are automatically encrypted. There are a lot of permutations around this encryption process. It can be driven from the command line. It can be driven, there's a GUI around it. There's the underlying tools are available and can be integrated into other solutions. This is simply one implementation of the encryption technology, the watched folder Directory Monitor. So while that's going on, and I should add that the documents will both be encrypted as PDFs and also converted into our Flash-based format, the OPN format, and I'll be mostly talking about the OPN format because that's the one that requires no client-side install, except, as Elizabeth mentioned, on tablets where there's a free app in the Apple App Store and also in the Google Play Store. So what do we do with all this? Well, we've got in our Rights Manager solution a web interface that allows one to control the permissions around documents and the documents themselves. And it's important to bear in mind that this is really a metadata manager, that it is not controlling or is not hosting the documents themselves. The server at ssl.fileopen.com is a database front end. Sorry, I'm trying to log out. I'm sorry, I have to log in correctly. Pardon me. It is a database front end, and it has information about the documents, but the documents themselves are not hosted on the solution. The documents are hosted wherever you want them to be. And I will be demonstrating this simplistic, or we like to think transparent, simple, easy to use solution where the documents appear on the web, but the documents can also be delivered as attachments to email, or hosted on your site, or hosted on some other site. There is no necessary integration with Dropbox or anything else. That's simply a convenience that we provide for people who don't have their own website or would prefer not to host the documents on their own website. But the key point that I'd like to stress is that all the things that we do here at FileOpen are always based around building tools that can be integrated into other systems. We are not really a service provider in the sense that some other SaaS companies are. There are hosted implementations of our solution, but those are simply examples, and the same software can be integrated into your website if you have one, or as Elizabeth mentioned, it has been integrated by a number of our partners. So I've encrypted some documents, and we should see there are now 3 of them left. The next one is going through. And what I've created ahead of time are 2 groups, and groups you can think of as being policies in the database, and I have 2 of them called Group 1 and Group 2, and I'll just take a quick tour through these policies before we get to look at the documents themselves. So in our architecture for controlling documents, we have a number of steps. You can think of them as the logical steps that the process at the server goes through as it evaluates a request to open a document. And underneath all this, of course, is encryption, and the key interaction that's taking place is that the document gets encrypted at some point, and then when the user attempts to open that document, a request is made to our permission server, or the permission server, because again, that is in many cases a permission server that was developed by our licensee or one of our partners. In this case, it's our implementation from the toolkit of a permission server. A call goes to that server identifying the document that's being accessed and the user that's attempting to access it, and requesting permission to open that document. And in the course of that, a number of things happen at the server. First, the server evaluates the environment that is making the request, and that, to first order, is the hardware environment that that user is coming from, and we have a number of identifiers that can be toggled on and off for that. There are some additional features that you can use to switch between different authentication modes. We can do things like manage concurrent access to the document, allowing only a certain number of people to view it, and only for a certain amount of time. If more than X number of users try to open the document, others have to wait until one of them closes the document, and so forth. The next thing that happens is that the server establishes a set of permissions that will govern the use of that document, and these are the kind of things that you might imagine, whether printing is to be allowed, or saving of the document, modification, annotation of the document. As Elizabeth mentioned, we support offline permission. By the way, I think that this is confusing, so far, yes, okay, it's changed. We support offline permission, and there's a wide variety, actually, of different features in the offline permission. Offline permission can be preemptive in the form of an ebook type sale where the user has bought access and never has to come back to the server and wouldn't expect to. It can be this mix that we call inverted mode offline permission, where the user has either online or offline permission, depending on whether that user is online or offline. It can be purely online permission. The offline permission can differ from the online permission. Printing can be allowed online but not offline. There can be limits on how many times the document is opened and so on. So there's a fairly rich set of features around offline permissioning, and there are some higher order features around what can be done. One in particular that we'll get back to a little bit later is the control over capture of the screen. And so I'll ask you to note that on this particular one, the demo group 1, the block screenshot policy has been set. And also you may have noticed, I think, that printing was not allowed in that group. And into that group, sorry, I should add, in that group there is one user, and that user is myself. So we have a user here, Sanford, who may have multiple machines. In fact, I have a lot of machines. In this case, I'll only be using one, but I could have a PC and a desktop PC and a laptop PC and an Android tablet and an iPhone or some combination of those. And I can have any number of devices that the publisher will allow me to enable. Then there's a second group, and in this second group, we have essentially the same policies, but I believe that in this case, we have no printing allowed. And let's also take a quick look at the watermark policies. And as Elizabeth mentioned, every document that's open can be stamped at runtime. That is to say, when it is opened, it can be given a set of watermarks, and there can be up to 3, a header, a footer, and a diagonal. And the diagonal can go in either direction. And actually, now we can also support watermarks up and down the margins, left, up, and right down in the margins. You can configure the look and feel, if you like, of these watermarks, the font, the color, the size. You can put them on top of the text or behind the text, and you can control what text they contain. And because these watermarks are being delivered when the documents are being opened, they can contain, or they can be different for each user that opens the document. So if you have one particular set of bytes, one file that's sitting on a server somewhere, and 2 users that come to open that same set of bytes, those users can get different watermarks and can also, of course, get different permissions. So you can have in your group structure a group that, for example, enables printing and another group that doesn't, or a group that expires at a certain point and another group that doesn't expire. You can also, expiration is a whole conversation unto itself. You can expire different users at different times, different documents at different times. So in this watermark, we have the text opened on today's now by the user's first name, last name, that user's email, and that user's company. So that's the text that will get stamped across the top of the page, on each page of the document. And there's some other, I won't go into all of it, but on the diagonal, we'll see the text that says the user's first name, last name, company, and that user's UUID. And somewhere else in there, there's going to be an IP address and so on. So if we look now at the document collection here, we now have 3 of the 4 documents. Actually, yeah, I guess one of them is still going through. One interesting side conversation is about the speed of conversion and encryption. The conversion, or rather the encryption of PDF files, is something we've been working on for a very long time and can do with a great deal of efficiency. And a number of our licensees do in real time. The documents are being created in real time and encrypted in real time. The conversion into Flash is a little bit slower, and I'm not entirely sure why it's taking quite as long as it is here, but so we've got at this point 3 of the, or some of the files, not all of them are up, but we have one here actually, sorry, that's not the one I wanted. What we have is one of the OPN files. So the farm almanac has been added to, or has been encrypted. And what we'll do is we'll put that document into the group that I'm in, demo group 1, and we'll take it out of the default FileOpen viewer group, and we'll save that change. And then we'll take a different document, tech, OPN, and we'll put that into the other group, demo group 2, which is the one that Austin is in. We'll talk about Austin in just a moment. We'll take this one out. So now we have two documents, one in demo group 1 and the other in demo group 2. See if the others have appeared for us yet. Page and tech farm, strangely, okay. So now let's talk a little bit about the UI. In fact, let me bring you back to my desktop here. And on my desktop, I have a Dropbox folder, and Dropbox has an application, and you can install Dropbox's application, and it's free to do so. And what the Dropbox application does is watch a folder on your local desktop and transfer anything that appears in that folder up to the Dropbox server, where you can then share that content in a number of ways. And one of the ways that you can share that content is to make your Dropbox folder available to an app that we manage, which is runs also on the Amazon AWS infrastructure at the moment, although not necessarily forever there. Dropbox itself runs, as far as I know, on AWS. This thing lives up in the cloud. And what it does is watch a Dropbox folder to see if any files have appeared in that folder. So at the back end, the FileOpen viewer, the viewer.fileopen.com app is checking a Dropbox to see if there are files there. And at the front end, it is rendering into people's browsers some list of files from that Dropbox. And it's configurable. It's configurable actually from a local file. So there is here on my disk something called listconfig.xml. And that listconfig file is going to determine the look and feel of this page on the web. So if I change some text in this local file, changing from FileOpen demo to FileOpen demonstration, and I save that, and I reload this, we should see that the text at the top changes to FileOpen demonstration. If I say, well, I don't want FileOpen's logo on that, I would rather have my own logo, then I can create a new link that points to some other image, and when I reload this page, the image that appears on the page will be that different graphic. So this is a configurable UI, and I can also, for example, change the colors of things. If I want the background color not to be gray, but to be some other color, I can make that change. And when I save that change, so all of this can, in other words, be embedded and customized and made to look however you would like it to look. Now, we see that when I reloaded it, one other thing happened, and that is that a file appeared in that list. And prior to that, there was no file in that list. And the reason that it has now appeared is because that file, farm, is in a group called, as we saw, demo group 1. And in demo group 1, there is a user called sbingham at fileopen.com. I can also not. I mean, it's not a requirement that anybody filter files this way. It may be preferable from your business model to have a list of files, of all the files that are up there, and have it be the case that users can click some of those links even though they may not be allowed to open those files. But alternatively, if you prefer, you can show individual users only those files that they will subsequently be able to open, because this page can communicate with the permission server to get permission to open the files. So I'll open this file now, and we'll see it loading. This is the FileOpen viewer. I have Flash on this device, and the Flash is being invoked. I didn't have to install any software other than Flash, and Flash is, at this point, probably the most ubiquitous platform out there. We are in the process of trying to evaluate what the relative penetration of Flash is against things like, for example, HTML5. And it does appear to be the case that Flash is far more prevalent at this point than any HTML5 variant. And without going into questions of what the relative penetration of different PDF viewers are, I think if there is any single lowest common denominator for distribution of content into the broad B2B environment, Flash is that lowest common denominator. So we see here now the watermarks that were imposed, and that has today's time and date, my name, email address, and company name. Here then is my name and company and IP address, and at the bottom my name, company, and UUID. And of course these are all configurable. So to recap now, we've seen that a document that appears in a group, or that has been added to a group that I'm a member of, can be made to appear in a listing that I'm granted access to. Let's see if the others have come up. And I see that document, but another user may not. So now let's prove that we can't have another user who will get a different behavior. And what I'll do is switch the screen to Austin and ask him to present and share his screen. Okay. I think I'm seeing his screen. Austin, good. And so Austin is going to, all right, now this part I skipped over. I had already done this, but the way that the page knows which files to show you is to identify you as being one or another user. And so Austin is giving his email address, and he should get now a different listing. So where I was shown the document farm, he's being shown the document tech, even though both documents are in the same Dropbox folder. Here he's being asked to authenticate, give his credentials. He should only have to do this once he's identified his machine. Subsequent attempts to open the document will not require him to enter his credentials again. And now he's demonstrating one other thing. Having clicked away from the page, you'll see that the page itself got blurred, and I'll come back to that and what is going on there in just a moment. That's a feature. So we can also, or actually I guess I'll take it back now if I may. So the presenter, okay, and I will show my screen. Hopefully that's the same screen. Somebody tell me if it's a different one. So if we go back in now, or I'll open this document again and just show again what, this is a new feature that Igor who I hope is on this call, have just introduced. If we go to this document, and let's see, I guess I have that in the wrong order. So I do not have screen capture turned on for my documents. So let's go back to groups here. And hang on just a second. If I go back to demo group 1, and I go into the policy here, any additional permissions on the visible. Model 1, well, so we'll come back to that in just a minute. What I want to show now is that a document, first actually what I'll show is that if I change this filter file names in my local list config and then go back to the page that was listing the files, now as you can see I've got all the files. So these are the files that are in my Dropbox. These 4, and why there are 4 and not 8 is a question that I'm going to have to figure out later. They should have all gone through, but we have the PDFs and the OPNs, but I think something that I just created those files this morning. If filter name is false, then I see all of them. If filter file names is true, then I see only the ones that I'm allowed to see. And all of these documents, besides being controlled at the link level, which we're showing now, are also controlled at the document level. So if I go to documents and I pick one of these documents, for example, tech, or I guess I was farm, so I'll go into farm here. And I can kill this document in a number of different ways. And by the way, let me show one other thing first. That we see that this document has been opened 2 times now. There were 2 requests to open it. Both of them were successful. There is, again, only one user who has access to these documents. And I've opened these documents twice. If I want to remove that document from circulation, I can make it inactive. And if I then try to click on it, what I'll see is that the interaction with the permission server will fail because that document is no longer available. That document has been revoked. And furthermore, when I go back and reload the page that shows me the documents that are available to me, that document is no longer available on that page as well. So in essence, what we're doing here is duplicating functionality that we've been offering for some years now, nearly all of this, via our PDF plugin. And our PDF plugin is, of course, a topic for another conversation. So quickly now, since I know I'm running a little late, I'll do the last thing, which is the monitored file. So here we have a PDF, and this is an ordinary PDF in the sense that any user with any PDF viewer can open this PDF. But different things will happen to different users of this PDF. If the user has Adobe Reader, and this is Adobe Reader 11 in the default configuration with no special changes to that configuration or modifications, no installation of anything. If a user has this software and attempts to open this document, what happens is that the second page, or I'm kind of stepping on that, but so the first page is visible to everyone, but pages 2 and 3 are only visible to people who have agreed to let the server track them. So you may have noticed there, and let me actually, just to do that fully properly, I'll go into the Trust Manager here and I'll change settings. I'll delete these 2, and in fact what happens the first time a user attempts to open this document is that they do see one, so they cannot see pages 2 or 3, but when they try to see page 3, they see one, or page 2, they see one time only this request. If they say yes to that, then the other pages appear, and in subsequent attempts to open the document, they don't see that ever again for the same server. So that's if they have Adobe Reader. If they have something other than Adobe Reader, then what happens, and let me see if I can launch Foxit Reader here somehow. I have Foxit Reader, and as Elizabeth mentioned, we do have a plugin into Foxit Reader, but that's not what we're using here. So we'll go find that same document that we just opened. And when we try to open it here in Foxit Reader, instead of getting the content of the first page, we see a message. And this is a configurable message, that is to say it would have your logo, not ours. And if the user is in any viewer other than Adobe Reader, then that user gets prompted to open the document via the web. And what happens there is that we link that user to our HTML5 viewer of that document. So here's the same document now rendered in native HTML5, in this case into the Chrome browser. The same rendering will work just as well on just about any handheld tablet today. HTML5 is very, very good in the world of tablets. Not so prevalent on the desktop world, but the design here is that we can gracefully degrade from HTML5 into Flash for users that can read Flash, and then from Flash down to PDF for users who don't have the ability to view Flash either. And with that, given that I think we're well past our time, or a little past our time, I will hand back, or I guess I will bring up this and ask everyone to send us questions that way, and I will give back control to Emmanuel.
Okay. Thank you, Sanford, and thank you for that demo. So as Sanford mentioned, we're really running out of time here, but I like to dedicate just at least 1 or 2 minutes to Q&A. So one question that we got from a few attendees is if we're going to be sending out Elizabeth's slides, and the answer to that is yes. We'll have those out to you shortly after the end of this webcast. Question 2. So we have a question from Cyrene Fisher, and he asks, can you encrypt documents on a Mac?
Yes, that's a good question. We have encryptor tools for Windows, Linux, Solaris, BSD, and HPUX, and higher-level interfaces to those tools for .NET and Java. But we do not, at the moment, have a desktop encryption tool for the Macintosh. It's something we may eventually develop, but at this point, if you want to do what I just did, the desktop encryption, you have to do that on a Windows machine. Decryption of PDF and OPN and HTML, of course, we can do on the Mac. We do have a Macintosh client for Adobe Reader, but we do not currently offer encryption on the Macintosh that at least is automated directory watched encryption on the Mac.
Unless you're using something like Parallels, which many of our Mac clients use if they don't want to use a Windows machine, they just use Parallels, and then you can encrypt fine on the Mac.
Right. Okay. Again, these are some great questions that we're getting in here. I really wish we had more time to answer all of them, but just a couple more. Somebody asked, it was Mitch Johnson asked if you can control printing and can you apply watermarks?
Oh, yes. So yes, printing can be turned on and off. Let's say you can not allow printing. In our binary, our PDF world, you can control printing at an extremely fine-grained level. You can control how many pages are printed, what printer is allowed to be printed to, and you can impose different watermarks on the document when it's printed, saying what printer, for example, it was printed to. In the OPN world, what I just showed, you can also turn on and off printing. You can limit how many print jobs are done, how many pages are printed, and you can impose different watermarks, print time watermarks that say this document, as Elizabeth pointed out, this document printed by this user at this time. So yes, you can impose print-specific watermarks at print time.
Okay, great. I think we have time for one more question. Sarah Lee asks if you can prevent document recipients from taking screenshots of the documents that you send them.
I'm sorry, screen share, was that correct?
Right, screen share, sorry about that.
Screenshots.
We can, with the Adobe Reader plugin, and again, we'll do another one of these about binary tools, things that are installed on people's operating systems. With that system, we can control sharing of the screen through a webinar like this, or to some extent, not fully through a remote desktop session. There we have to detect that the session is running and not allow the document to open. But we can, yes, with the binary plugin. With the Flash-based plugin, all that we can do is watermark it and make it unviewable when it is not the active screen. But it isn't possible, as far as we know, from Flash to prevent that kind of sharing.
Okay. So for all the questions that we didn't get a chance to answer during this webcast, we will be answering via email. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending today's webcast, and if you have any further questions that you didn't get to ask, you can also email us at contact@FileOpen. We look forward to hearing from you, and we wish you all a great day.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks, Emmanuel.
Thank you.